There you go.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Cheryl Kelly, and I am a field rep as well as an in-house rep. I have accounts in Maryland, Delaware. I have accounts in the greater Philadelphia area, and then I also kind of go west into Pennsylvania. Hello, Susan at Penguin Books. And I also have Ohio. So I'm so happy to be here. And for all my booksellers, I just have to say I miss you so much, and I hope everybody's doing well. So let's get started. My first title on here is a wonderful trade paperback original, Cher and Me and Major Whittlesley. This is a gorgeously written novel based on a true story during World War I, between a messenger pigeon and a soldier. We've got the two narratives. Cher and Me is the perspective reflecting on her life up until now, where she really does sit in the Smithsonian. So maybe some of you have seen her. The other is the Major, as he reflects on his life before, during, and after World War I. Their stories have like a lot of major plot points. Their narratives provide different looks at the war. But at the heart of the book is really love for country, family, and for those who know you best. It's heartbreaking, but it's a beautiful story. This has an August on sale date that's going to be great for late summer reading, and this trade paperback I really feel like is going to have the legs to carry into nice fall sales. The author is an indie favorite, and we have really good support from great authors like Rebecca Mackay and J. Ryan Strodell. And don't forget, this is a trade paperback. So moving on to the next title, 50 Words for Rain. This is probably my favorite novel on the fall list. Beautiful, beautiful story here. There's a big growing market right now for books about diverse cultures across genre, and this book totally nails it. It's a beautiful, sweeping story set against World War II, and our protagonist, Nori, is the daughter of Japanese royalty with a black GI father. Her life in the beginning is full of shame, abuse, and she's hidden away. But you also have the beautiful love story between a brother and a sister, where her brother never ceases, and together they persevere and really rise up from the challenges of her life. I was so excited this morning. We got a letter from the author, and I just want to read a little bit of the letter that she wrote for the booksellers and for the reps. She says, "For as long as I can remember, I've been asked, what are you? Because your eyes, your hair, the way you speak, where are you from? You're not quite right. Asha, what's your story?" My response to these questions was always, "What do you think I am?" She goes on to say, "Nori is a reflection of both who I am and who I want to be, lonely and curious, clever and kind. Like her, I have accumulated cuts, big and small, and I have a profound respect for the understated strength that is resilience. I want to celebrate people who remain kind in the face of cruelty, which I believe takes an incredible kind of bravery, one I think is too often disregarded. My deepest gratitude to all who are willing to give this story a chance." So when I read this book, to me, this is really early Lisa C. The story is definitely a perfect cross between Gentlemen in Moscow and Where the Crawdads Sing. Also, I can see older YA for this book. Asha is an East Coast girl. She grew up in the DC area, and she now lives in New York. Also, a promo title, so check with your rep. Make sure you got your 6 for $21. And I know hardcover fiction is really selling well in a lot of the stores. So with a September 1st on sale date, I'm super excited about this title. The next title is The Thursday Murder Club. We had a lot of debate on this cover. I personally think it's a really charming cover. The read, though, is definitely a rep favorite. We have comparisons to Alan Bradley's Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, or Anthony Horowitz' The Magpie Murders. This is a charming mystery, but it's not too cozy, so don't kind of get caught up in that. We're set in an English countryside. It's a contemporary story at the Cooper's Chase retirement home with a group of octogenarians who meet every Thursday in the jigsaw room to solve murders. And then all of a sudden, they find themselves involved in a real-time murder. So this definitely is a hardcover in-house. This is a favorite in-house. And our author has been signed on for a second book. So they're really hoping to kind of build a franchise with this, much as they've done with Alan Bradley. And this, too, is a promo. So I'm going to pass the buck over to Doug. And Doug, you are muted.
I hope I'm unmuted now. I'm Doug Hodges. I sell Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Jersey. I see some names on here I recognize, and many I don't. But my first book is Squeeze Me by Carl Hyacin, who is one of my favorite people and one of my favorite authors. And this book, set in Florida, where else? He takes on a woman who heads up a group called the Potussies, who are ardent supporters of the president. She disappears, is murdered, and then the president comes up and claims it is the result of rampaging immigrants, which turns out not to be the case. You know Carl Hyacin from Nature Girl, from Sick Puppy, from Bad Monkey, from any number of great best-selling books, books, but also his YA title, Hoot and Flush and Scat, which has sold over 700,000. Unless we forget, humor and wit is really at the basis of Carl's books. And in this case, it's Florida, it's Trump world. What could be better for a recipe for a Carl Hyacin book? One quick note, at Sonny Maida's memorial service in February, Carl Hyacin spoke. And he said first he couldn't believe that Sonny Maida read his books to begin with. And then he signed with Knopf. But he went on to tell stories of sending Sonny clippings from Florida of outrageous happenings, which Sonny Maida really enjoyed. But again, it's Carl Hyacin, who will be a bestseller. He's one of my favorite authors. Next. The Quiet American book I thoroughly enjoyed. It traces 4 CIA spies. It is written by Scott Anderson, known mostly for his best-selling book, Lawrence of Arabia, which sold over 260,000 copies in all formats. This traces 4 spies, their idealistic beginnings in the CIA, and their ending, which ended, sadly, because America betrayed their own values in trying to fight the Cold War. In some ways, it mirrors our own time, where you have CIA agents coming forth to testify about Russians going on against America, and they are then sidelined or branded traitors. The book will appeal to readers of Say Nothing, Bright and Shining Light, David Grann, non-fiction, and we'll keep open a discussion about what the CIA is intended to do, what it hopes to do, and too often what it fails to do because it does not get support from its own country. Next. Yaa Gyasi's next novel is Transcendent Kingdom. You know her from Homegoing, which sold over 600,000 in all formats. This is a 200,000 print. It is a deeply felt and raw look at a family. It somewhat mirrors the author's own family, as the protagonist is a graduate student at Stanford, which Gyasi was, and then it chronicles the problems in the family: drug overdose by a brother, a mother who was near suicide, and then an evangelical encounter that the character in the novel hopes will change her life. Gyasi was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle First Novel Award, the Anne Hemingway Award, and she has great quotes leading up to this book. I'll read one from Ann Patchett, which is simply, I would say the Transcendent Kingdom is a novel of our time, and it is. but it is so much more than that. It is a novel for all time. And that's from Ann Patchett. This is obviously for readers of writers like Colson Whitehead or Toni Morrison, other narrative text for the spirits of our time. Now we go to Amanda, I think.
Thank you, Doug. My name is Amanda McGuire. I am an in-house sales rep based in Westminster with Cheryl. And my territory is a little bit bigger because I sell all of our adult lines. So I cover the whole Eastern Seaboard and most of the South. But my first book here today is Daddy from Emma Cline. We all loved Emma Cline from the girls. She's such a fantastic writer that really just launched into the literary world. Emma's short story collection is just as kind of weird and intrusively intimate as the girls was, but I really love the way each of these stories is about how people react when their lives are completely thrown upside down. So we have a father who's collecting his son from boarding school after a sort of crazy act of violence at the school. There's a nanny for a celebrity family who's hiding after a big tabloid scandal breaks. They're all these lives that are just very shaken to their foundations. And just like we expect from Emma Cline in her writing, she exposes all of the raw nerve endings for her characters. I'd say this is very much for readers of Otesha Mosfegh if they want to dip into a little bit of short stories. The next one I've got here is a very different book, What Can I Do, from Jane Fonda. And Jane, of course, is a well-known activist, and whether she's an inspiring activist or a controversial one, depending on who you ask, everybody has seen her on the front lines of various fights. But last fall, she got involved for really the first time in the climate change fight, and she was inspired by younger activists like Greta Thunberg. But seeing and hearing this conversation really spurred her to move to DC and to launch what she called her Fire Drill Friday protests. You might have seen her in the headlines. She was arrested a couple of times. But she's bringing that lifetime of activism to her experience to the climate change fight. And this book is really her way of engaging other people and telling them how they can get involved and get started in it. I think it's going to be a really exciting one as more and more people are engaging in protest, and now particularly climate change protest. And then a novel that we are very excited for, What Are You Going Through, by Sigrid Nunez. This is her first book since winning the National Book Award last year for The Friend. So her audience has grown by leaps and bounds. And this book is also growing leaps and bounds. It really ranges much wider. I found it to be a really meditative read. It's the story of a woman who is describing various encounters she has over the course of her life. She's searching for connection, and I think that's something a lot of us can relate to, especially right now. And really finding that in some unexpected ways and in some unexpected people. This book really struck a nerve for me as I was reading it kind of in the midst of quarantine and feeling pretty isolated. So I think it's going to be a really great one for readers who are looking to reach out a little bit and find that connection. And I am now going to pass this over to Jerry, who's going to take the next ones.
There we go. Hi, I'm Jerry Lex. I represent the Crown and Random House publishing groups, as well as client publishers such as Quirk and Melville House. And I sell stores in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Here is a terrific book about an iconic figure in American history. This is a sweeping and comprehensive biography of JFK, as well as the making of the American century. Fred Lauderdale is the author of Embers of War, which earned a Pulitzer Prize for him in 2013. I read a decent portion of the manuscript and found it very accessible and quite a compelling read. The pages just turn themselves. It's so engaging. I think the book can be sold confidently as the biography of the holiday season. It's 800 pages, and a second volume is in the works, looking at 2022 publication. Redemption. This is a book created by the eldest daughter of Bob Marley, and it contains his words, lyrics, and his philosophy. The book begins with a preface by the author, his daughter, and shares quotes from a compilation of her father's interviews, which come from her own personal collection. Then there's lyrics to Redemption Song, which was released 40 years this coming October. And then what follows then are 7 parts of the book, each with its own theme and illustrations, such as seeking redemption, trusting in time, and uniting in one purpose. The format is an almost square hardcover with color on just about every page and illustrations throughout. And it's got a good price point at $16.99. Deadly Education. There's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm from booksellers who downloaded the galley and also in-house sales for this new novel from Amy Novick. And as you can see here in Edelweiss, there were 136, now there's 140 much loves. It's the first of a new trilogy, which the book editor sees as truly a brilliant novel that works on every level and is perfect for readers from age 10 to 110. All 3 books in the trilogy will be completed before we publish book 1, with future volumes scheduled at 9-month intervals. Our San Francisco rep described this book as Mean Girls at Hogwarts, directed by Quentin Tarantino. It's received star reviews of Publishers Weekly, Library Journal. Author Terry Brooks says, A Deadly Education is a book that lives up to its gobsmacker of an opening sentence and follows right through to its shocker of an ending that promises more to come. Naomi Novik is relentlessly innovative and entertaining. We have promotional allowances of $25 and $50 for orders of 6 and 12 copies, respectively. And I really think this book is going to greatly expand the author's readership. Thank you for your support for this coming fall. And we're over to Cheryl again.
And here we are with a new Nick Hornby. During the fall selling, I was a little bit surprised. There are some younger booksellers who really weren't aware of Hornby, but many of us adore him and remember him for some of his fiction like Funny Girl, State of the Union, and his oldie but goodie, High Fidelity. So we might have a little bit of work to do with some of the younger booksellers with this one. But is Pacey and Fun. I had not read Nick Hornby before, and I fell in love with the characters and the stories. So we meet Lucy, and she's a single mom just trying to get through life with her 2 small boys. And suddenly she finds herself wondering about Joseph, who works at the local butcher shop. But Joseph is younger, totally from a different generation. He's from a totally different class, and he is also a different race. And yes, this book is perfect for today's culture. It just fits right in. I love how Nick Hornby created a story for our times, set in this culture that feels relevant today, but he brings all of these things together in a very appealing way to kind of read and dive into these characters, fall in love with the setting, the story, and just the whole package. So I love this book. It's fantastic. It's Riverhead, And, you know, Riverhead really gets behind him with the packaging, the promotion, and all of it. So this is a promo title too. So if you do not have your 6, I think you need to let your rep know, because this September on sale date, I think we're going to do well with this one. The next title is American Democracy. This is actually from one of our client publishers, Library of America. I consider this book a little gem. I think it, you know, it's a little buried in our list, and I think it's an important book to talk about. This is an excellent alternative for those who want to kind of take a step back and look to the past for inspiration and guidance for today. American Democracy. It presents key writings from our past and addresses contemporary hot points. So there's race, gender, immigration, citizenship, opportunity, and inequality. And we've got some really great writers, leaders in here. There's Frederick Douglass, and there's a letter from him, and it's called What to the Slave is the 4th of July. There's a letter from George Washington to the Hebrew congregation at Newport, Virginia. There's a letter from Martin Luther King that he wrote from a Birmingham jail. Jane Addams, she wrote a letter, it was on her perspective of the analysis of gender and social class in charity work. So it's a really robust collection that I think is perfect for today's climate. The price point is fantastic. It's $21.95, and I think this is great for not only somebody who kind of wants, like, again, take a step back and kind of think about the politics today, but is interested in social issues as well as a history reader. And then my last title that I'm going to talk about is We Gather Together by Denise Kiernan. This is a huge print run. It's 150,000. This is an author that I think you all are familiar with. She has a book, The Last Castle, sold over 85,000 titles, as well as Girls of Atomic City. 210 copies have been sold. So We Gather Together is really a perfect escape for the fall read. I really think about in preparation of holidays as we're living through this pandemic and kind of the turmoil in our country right now. This is the untold story set in the Civil War-torn era of our country about a woman named Sarah Hale. And she kind of thought about Thanksgiving in a time when the country, the Civil War, was in turmoil. She's considered a 19th century polymath. She was a publisher of a magazine. They published the likes of Hawthorne and Poe, as well as kind of lifestyle, where there's some of the very first images of Christmas trees were published. And she was also a major advocate for women at a time where women really did not have a voice. So this book, to me, is a perfect book. Somebody wants to read our culture, loves history, but I also really think this would be a beautiful upmarket hostess gift for the fall. So now that was mine. I do want to give a real quick pitch for Vanishing Half. It's on sale. I know you guys are selling it well. Keep at it. The numbers are blowing out. So I want to now send it over to Doug.
Thanks, Cheryl. The next book is by one of my favorite nonfiction writers, A.W. Brown. He's done wonderful biographies of Ben Franklin and FDR. And this one, he takes on two of the most interesting characters of the time in the Civil War. John Brown, who had one way of approaching slavery with the sword. And if anyone's not read a biography of John Brown, he's a fascinating man. And on the other side, Lincoln, who we all know well. And Lincoln was approaching the idea of ridding the country of slavery through politics. These men overlapped approach. Obviously, the Civil War occurred, so violence was the thing that solved or ended slavery in this country. Curiously enough, Brown was considered a saint in the North by abolitionists and by many Northerners. In the South, he was labeled a terrorist for his actions against those who supported slavery. The book really chronicles the two individuals in a fascinating way as it goes from chapter to chapter. Anyone who reads H.W. Brands is also a reader of Ron Chernow or Walter Isaacson or Hanson Sides. He has a way of telling narrative history that fascinates you and involves you. I could think more currently of Grand by Chernow, which does the same thing. The 75,000 print, it goes on sale in October, and it's H.W. Brands. On the lighter side, Julia Child, People Who Love to Eat Are Always the Best People. It is a 50,000 print. It goes on sale before the holidays, where at a time when I think it will sell even more. It is a counter display size, and it's wonderful quotes from one of America's favorite people. An author that I wished I'd had a chance to meet. I would hear stories years ago from other reps who had worked with Julia, be it Boston or in California. And then she has quotes mainly into, but also circles around life and love. And I love quotes like, "The only time to eat diet food is while you're waiting for the steak to cook." We know of the blockbuster success of Julie and Julia, and fact that Julia Child's immortalized on a postage stamp. There's also an ongoing, upcoming HBO Max series about Julia, a documentary about her, and she also has her kitchen, which is a permanent display at the Smithsonian Institution. Julia just seems forever popular. This will be ideal for holiday buyers and for anyone interested in cooking and wit and wisdom of Julia. Bad Muslim Discount. This is a promotion title. 6 for $25. It is a 25,000 print. It is by Syed Masood. It's a book that chronicles two Muslim families, one from Bangladesh, one from Iraq, and the way they interact and the different paths they take as they adapt to life in America. It's obviously for readers of Fatima Mirza and Hanif Qureshi and Mira Jacob. And it does give a really rich nuance of voice to the immigrant experience here as they adapt to a very different lifestyle compared to Pakistan or Bangladesh. It already has a wonderful quote from Gary Shanagart, which I don't often read quotes, but I like this one because Shanagart says, "Take it from a bad Jew. This is one of the bravest and most eye-opening novels of the year. Masood is a whiz at characters and knows the way the world works inside out, a future classic." I think this book will do very, very well and get very good reviews. And I think my final title is from Beacon, one of our client publishers. It is a 30,000 print. It goes on sale in January. The hardcover, A Black Woman's History of the United States, is currently doing quite well. It sold out of the first print of 8,500. We've gone back for a reprint of 3,000, which just came in a few days ago. Dana Barry and Kali Gross are well-known writers in this field. Gross is at Rutgers University. Barry is at the University of Texas in Austin. And in this book, the authors show Black women's unique ability to make their own communities while combating centuries of oppression. And the fact that it's an essential component of our approach to systemic racism, understanding what it is and how it has been worked against on the very local community level. There are voices in here of enslaved women, free women, activists, queer women, artists, and others to bring home the Black woman experience and the difference they've made in their communities. The book is obviously for readers of Toni Morrison or How to Be an Anti-Racist or Slavery by Another Name. There's so many books out there doing quite well at this time, and this one I think has a special place because of its focus on the women's impact on the Black experience in America. That is all my books. So that's all my books. Thanks to everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Doug. And I will take us back into the world of fiction with Bestiary, a new novel from One World, which we love, one of our favorite imprints. And the author is a poet, very well established, very popular, especially on Instagram and Twitter. But she really brings that poet sensibility to this book. I love it. It's got a touch of magical realism to it, which always kind of sparks my interest in a book. But it's the story of 3 generations of Taiwanese American women, and they're sort of haunted by the myths of their homeland, and that manifests itself in a very literal way. The mother tells the story of a tiger spirit that inhabits women and nibbles children's toes to her daughter, and then the daughter wakes up with a tiger's tail one day, as an example. But it's a really beautiful way for them to explore their culture together, to explore what it means to be removed from their culture and living in America. It was just announced this week as a long list contender for the Center for Fiction's First Novel Award, which we're very excited about. I think that any readers who loved Ocean Vuong and sort of the poetry that he brings to prose are also really going to love this and love exploring it. Now, every season it feels like there's a book that the sales reps read and start talking about and just never stop talking about. And this season, that's The Prophets from Robert Jones Jr. You might have seen Robert and Sally, his editor, on the BEA Buzz panel this year. They had a great chat about this book. But this is absolutely a stunning debut novel. It's got some of the most fantastic prose I've read in a long time, the kind of book you read slowly so that you can enjoy it. But it's the story of a love between 2 enslaved men, Samuel and Isaiah, and their love is really something that you will never forget. It impacts and changes everyone that they encounter on the plantation they're enslaved on, and I think it impacts all of the readers the same way. It's really a tender love. You almost feel like you're intruding on them just by reading about it, because it feels that intimate. We really love this book, and I think you guys are going to love it too. Definitely for readers of Ta-Nehisi Coates, The Water Dancer, and Colson Whitehead, but I think there's a very broad audience for a book this good, and it's just going to be a delight to see it out in the world. I've already warned everyone I won't stop talking about it. And then my next one on here is actually a sneak peek to our spring list, not on the fall list. The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee is really a book about the price of racism, and she brings an economist's eye to the biggest challenges that the U.S. faces, from rebuilding infrastructure to the wage gap, problems we just can't seem to find solutions for, so things like climate change and public health. And she finds that there's really a common factor here, and it's racism, and also this sort of insidious idea that if we expand equality, it's a zero-sum game, that if you're creating opportunity for some people, you're taking opportunity away from others. And she's really challenging that idea and saying, no, the costs are really borne by everyone in our society. It's not just an indictment of American society, though, because Heather is exploring a lot of different businesses and organizations, and especially religious groups, that are growing what she calls a solidarity dividend, and investing in racial equality and seeing the economic benefits of that. So it's a very hopeful book. It explores sort of where we are and how we got here, but also how we can move forward together. And I think it's one we'll all look forward to seeing on that spring list together. And with that, I will pass it back over to Jerry.
Jerry, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. So during the first 30 weeks in the market. Yotam's previous book, Atalangi Simple, outsold Plenty More and Jerusalem by 20% and 69% respectively. Atalangi Simple was the 8th best-selling cookbook published in the U.S. last year. Yotam is the primary market influencer who's driving the popularity of Middle Eastern food and has been making American cooks excited to cook vegetables. I think his appeal comes from the uniqueness and deliciousness of his recipes. He really is a singular talent who always gets people excited to cook, and I think his book sales reflect that. 100% of the recipes in this new cookbook are vegetarian, with 40% being vegan, while the other 60% can be made vegan. There's 100 recipes in the book for more than 40 different vegetables, plus a few fruits. And I just think it's beautifully illustrated. Dessert Person. So Claire Saffitz, who's the author of Dessert Person, is a rocketing star in the world of baking. She's Harvard educated, has a master's degree from Canada, McGill University. She studied pastry in Paris. She's a Bon Appetit star and a YouTube sensation. And on social media, she's trending higher than Yotam Atalangi. When her book was first acquired, she had 122,000 followers on social media. Now it's up to 573,000. Her audience are home bakers and hobby bakers, so she covers all levels of the baking process. And the majority of her fans are millennials, with 53% of them being men. For positioning, we're comparing this book to Alison Roman's first cookbook, Dining In, which was published a couple years ago, and that book surprised many, many people, and to date sold over 130,000 copies. The book is paper over board, has 120 recipes, there's 300 4-color photographs. We're offering a $25 promotional allowance for orders of 6, and we just got confirmation on national publicity at Good Morning America on October 20th, CBS Saturday Morning, and NPR, All Things Considered, with dates to come, but those are all confirmations. Ex Libris. This book I really think is something special, and I think we all know the author of Ex Libris as a former book review editor of the New York Times. She was awarded a Pulitzer Prize for literary criticism back in the late 1990s and was dubbed the most powerful book critic in the English-speaking world by Vanity Fair. This is an item for bibliophiles, book club lovers, library lovers. And it was created not to be an end-all, be-all list, but a collection of great works of literature. The author suggests this as a starting point to becoming a well-rounded reader. And she becomes more personal in this book than she ever has been before, speaking of particular authors she's come to know over the years. It's not organized by theme or in chapters, but alphabetical by author. And there's no critical reviews, just her pure joy at the written word and her marvel at the writer's craft. And as you can see, it's gorgeously illustrated with full color throughout. It's got a rounded spine, and I think it's perfect for the independent bookstore and should appear in stacks everywhere as an ideal item for gift giving. And our last title is How to Do Nothing. This is a Melville House book that's now going to be published in paperback. And in hardcover, this sold enormously well. It was a New York Times bestseller and made dozens of best of the year lists, including Barack Obama's. It's a critique of the forces vying for our attention, and it redefines what we think as productivity. It shows the reader a new way to connect with the environment and reveals all that we've been too distracted to see about ourselves and our world. The book's been reviewed by a variety of press covering technology, business, current events, spirituality, nature, politics, and culture. So obviously, it's a book for a very wide audience. Many accounts chase this book in hardcover. So please order it generously, display it prominently when it arrives in your stores right after the holidays. And that completes our presentation.
All right, thank you all for presenting. Thank you everybody for coming. There are no physical ARCs available. There's only the digital downloads via Edelweiss. I will share the link once more for the Edelweiss. And that concludes our presentation for today.